Welcome to the Ultra Ascent Podcast. Your hosts, Alex Proctor and Mark Dowdle, are two aspiring professional runners with the goal to take you on a journey of making that dream a reality. You'll be given an inside look to what life is like as an unsponsored athlete and all the trials and tribulations that it entails. Along the way, they'll share how they train, what races and challenges are currently on their calendar, and how they aim to land support from brands. Alex intends to dominate in the professional trail running sector, taking souls and finishing on top the podium at the most premier trail races around the world, while Mark seeks to find new ways to discover the unknown and self-made, not yet accomplished ultra distance challenges. Let's get into the show. Diving into a lot of things today. We got to address blasphemy of Proctor running a sub 4 minute mile. No, shout out Tim Riley and the boys.
Shout out to Tim Riley, Austin Yoakum, and the boys. On the Coach 'em Up podcast, there was a shout out for me from Tim. I'd gone down to TRE and Austin hooked us up together, and I ended up running to his facility down in Austin, Texas, and we went to a track and did a track workout, speed workout, and I had never run a sub 5 minute mile before. I never tried to really. I mean, on a flat ground, I'd done downhill sub 5s before, but nothing like on a track. I think the fastest mile previously that I'd run legitly was back in sophomore year of high school, like I don't know how many years ago, back in like 2015, 2014. And it was 5:06. So I was thinking to myself on that day down in Austin, in the 80-degree heat, I was like, I just want to go sub 5, 4:59, nothing more, nothing less. So after the speed workout we had done on the track, doing hurdles, doing some sprints, max effort sprints, I was telling him, I was like, I think I'm just going to go for a sub 5 mile. He's like, oh, all right, like I'll record it for you. And so I went for it. In the first lap, my first 400-meter lap was 62 seconds, which would mean like I went out at 4:10 pace basically, like, yeah. Which is insane. Like I went through and I was like, oh man, like I didn't check my split at the 200-meter mark, so I didn't know where I was at. I was just kind of gunning for it. Didn't really have much experience doing too many track workouts before, so I didn't know how to pace an all-out mile. And I get to him, I'm like, dude, I might have to just like end it right here or walk it. But then he's like, oh, keep going, keep going. So then I keep running around, dodging like balls from the high schoolers that are out in the field during their gym class. And I get my consistency down on the laps times. I think like reeling it back into like 75 seconds per lap. And I ended up finishing like 4:54, just gagging and like not able to breathe and almost like throwing up, going full lactic. But on the podcast, he recalls that I went for like a 4-minute mile, which is just insanity. But I'll take the shout out on the podcast. If people can believe that I can do a 4-minute mile, maybe I could someday. But with the training I'm doing for this Buffalo Run 50 miler that's coming up on Friday, I don't think I would be in that kind of shape. Let alone I don't know if ever. Like if you can get close to 4 minutes per mile and possibly even break that threshold, like you're in a different class of track runner / athlete. It's a whole different world. I was telling Dowdle before, like running a sub 5 minute mile might be like squatting 385 to 405 potentially, which is like hard, but with enough training you can do it. I'd say running like a sub 4 mile or like low 4s is like squatting like 600 to 700 pounds at least, for sure. I mean, like you have to be a freak of nature and dedicate a good chunk of training to do that. Well, this is say that was false on the Coach 'em Up podcast. Don't want people to necessarily think I can do that yet.
That is the right way to phrase it. And as of June 2022, according to ChatGPT, 1,755 humans have run a sub 4 minute mile.
Yes. And the thing is with that, like it's such a big deal that there's like this tree farm where they plant a tree for everyone that's run a sub 4 minute mile.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So it's like,
so there's not a tree with Proctor's name on it just yet.
Definitely not. No, I think it would have to be in a sanctioned event too. It couldn't be at a random high school track in the middle of the day in Austin, Texas. So yeah, just wanted to clarify that, and then like to highlight that Dowdle got a shout out on the Cam Hanes podcast recently, since he's a Minnesotan. There was a fellow Minnesotan on the podcast, so Cam Hanes shouted out that he knew another Minnesotan, and coincidentally,
Hey, we're pretty much best friends at this point.
he brought up that Dowdle had run the Arrowhead 135, and he knew the exact mileage. He knew that Dowdle was pulling a sled, so it looked like he did his research and wasn't embellishing anything. So
Hey,
kudos to Cam Hanes.
we're getting the facts right. That's all we care about.
Yeah.
We appreciate the shout outs. We just want the facts.
Yeah, his son Truett lives. I don't think he lives too far from me, so I gotta.
Yeah, you
hit
got
him
to
up, or
get
if-
connected with him.
I mean, you have the connection, dude. He's commented on your posts.
I
you're
did-
boys with him.
I did send him some training for the last person standing. So
Oh, really?
yeah,
Nice.
He
He's
had
the one with BPN, right?
yeah, he had asked
Nice.
for some training advice, so I sent him over a 1-pager, an official training plan. Not that I really have one other than Calendar Club, but
It's crazy. He's going for that. He's going for the last man standing race while trying to go for a sub 2:30 marathon. That's insane.
while also training for Leadville in August.
While also trying to do 50 pull-ups in one set,
Yeah,
which is man's crack.
unreal. That dude, yeah, is insane. Well, let's transition. I got some sponsor updates for a sponsor segment. Not that it's like an official sponsor, but I recently turned down a $400 compensation and a free pair of shoes to a big running shoe brand. I know we talked about this on a previous podcast, or maybe we talked it off
He was
after.
offline. Yeah.
Yeah. But I got reached out about sending over. It was like UGC content, so I would get
User-generated
sent.
content.
Yeah, user generated content. So a lot of the influencers that you see pushing shoes, just so everybody's aware that they don't necessarily have to like the shoes. We use the shoes. Not saying that all don't, but it was just confirmation for me on my end that these brands really are just pushing product and they want to get as much access to real, authentic content quality. And we had gone back and forth on the terms. And one of the things that I had asked is like, hey, in order for me to, and this was advice from Proc, is like, in order for me to really put my stamp of approval on it, whether it was going to be on my socials or not, for them to use it in ads, for them to use it on their social platforms, for them to put it up as a poster in a store of theirs, I would need to, use and abuse the shoes and get an understanding if I actually like them or not. And they said that's not part of the process. So I would have to essentially send them pieces of content regardless if I actually like the shoes or not. And that's just not something I was willing to do. So I turned it down. $400 would have been nice because it would have been covered a month's worth of rent. But something that I talked about with you and with Kellen is like $400 is enough to cover rent, but it's also not enough to like change my life. And if I can't say no to $400, then what would stop me further down the line from someone offering me $2,000 to post content or do something like that? So, yeah, I mean, that was just a quick sponsor update of like, hey, not everything you see online. I know I joke about like big treadmill, big shoe, these influencers just pushing product that they don't actually believe in. It is coming from a place where I know the behind the scenes aspect to it. So just use that to keep that in your knowledge toolbox.
Yeah, and it's interesting when I see these Hoka ads on my Instagram feed, and it's like the people using the shoe for the first time and getting their reactions to it. Like, that's not really help anybody. Like,
Yeah.
a shoe might feel good for the first time. Like, any shoe might feel good for the first time because it's some new stimulus that you're feeling on your feet. But like, you kind of need to get 50 to 100 miles on a shoe to truly know if you like it or not.
Right.
At the very least, like, and then you don't even know what the durability is like past that for your own personal usage, and like pushing that to other people. It's kind of a interesting thing to do, to be paid that much money to do. Yeah.
And well, that's what's wild to me is, like I said, like $400 to me right now is a lot. I know it's not
Mm-hmm.
a ton of money, but the fact that they're willing to pay someone $400 to not even care about whether or not they like the shoes, this just leads me to believe there's so much more money in the sport
Oh yeah.
than is being presented online of like athletes are being wildly underpaid in this sport. I think because everything is pushed by the brands, and a recent like shit talker episode that Cam Hanes had where they talk a little bit about this. And he's doing some tests on shoes himself to test the durability in like a controlled environment on a treadmill and just seeing how it they break down over miles. And it's like once we can move away from relying on the brands as that source of like financial stability, then I
Mm-hmm.
think there'll be a lot more transparency in the sport. Like, I don't know what Finn makes, but the fact that Finn has another outlet with his media and his podcast, it's like he has other sources of making money and he's probably less beholden to sponsors and like needing them as his main source. And I just think I hope we get to a place, and I think we will, where we can do that with running. As like you see Caitlin Clark, you see her contract in the WNBA, it is insignificant compared to the deals that she's getting with brands. And like you see at the college level, people are getting paid on like a great example is the McNeese or McNeese uh,
McNeese manager, the equipment
yeah, like
manager.
that is super cool. That is super cool. And
Yeah.
that's a power of a brand, but that's also the power of like a personality and someone making an impact and like getting rewarded for that financially. So
Yeah, he's the reason why I picked them to win 2 games. They ended up winning the first one, which is fun consolation. But
sick. Yeah.
yeah, and I also like to further clarify that this is not just Hoka doing this, just because I brought that up as an example. Like, there's plenty of all the big brands that you see out there are doing the exact same thing. Um, and then Finn is with Single Track. Just wanted to make sure that was
Yeah.
clarified for
Shout
the
that out.
audience that doesn't know.
And this wasn't Hoka.
No, no,
Just
yeah, yeah.
um
So I think good
any
on
any
you
any
for.
updates on your end
Um,
that you'd like
let's
to
see.
share?
We're getting further down the process with 910 shoes and a few of the prototypes. I haven't received any yet because we're still like working on like ironing some things out. Their designers are, mocking things up, coming to me with colorways, and then ASAP, he's kind of like middlemaning it and like giving my feedback to them. They're changing things. So still working on that. I think I should have a shoe in my hands in April or May, which would be nice to be able to test out enough before UTMB if I were to use the shoe for UTMB, um, which is nice as far as like job opportunities or sponsorships that are new. I don't think there's any right now, but I have been receiving um, quite a few like bottles and like Hydro Pack, like soft flasks from Hydro Pack. I'd met John with Hydro Pack at TRE, so he's been hooking me up with some bottles to use for my races, which is nice because the handhelds in like these fast race settings are the most efficient for
Mm.
just bottle swapping and having in your hands if you don't want to use too many different things. So that's a cool one where I'm just getting some free product there. And then, um,
How's the Run Rabbit coming?
oh, good, yeah, Rabbit, they've been good. They they just said that they're the apparel sponsor for like Leadville. So if I wanted to, I could have put my name in the hat for, a few different entries to Leadville this year. But since I have a race schedule that wouldn't align with that, I
Yeah.
didn't put my name in that hat. But it's cool to know that since they're sponsoring, they have a few sponsor spots that they opened up to people that want the chance to go there. Um, but they've been sending apparel. The winter gear came in. It's pretty sweet, and then just some supplementary stuff so that we can make our own choices and purchases on their site. Um, Last thing I think right now is just I've been in talks DMing Adam with Tantrums. They're a company that makes vests and like ultra lightweight running vests, like Solomon's and like Ultimate Direction, those type of things. So I hit him up and asked if he had any larges on hand, because I think the vests he's selling right now commercially are in like a pre-order or like a pre-sale type thing where they won't get shipped out for a while. So I wanted to see if he had one on hand in my size that he could send my way that could rep at the Buffalo Run 50 this Friday. And he said he did. He said he'd find one. So he said he'd find one, and then he just sent me the tracking number, which is kind of badass. So I think that's going to be arriving today from him. And I think the difference mostly is that it's super lightweight and form fitting. I think it's the lightest vest in the market that has like a spot where you can put a bladder, like a clip that you can put a bladder in there. I think the Salomon Advanced Skin 5, which is like the most popular vest out there, is similar in weight, but doesn't have a clip for a bladder if you wanted to carry something on your back. So that's sweet. I think that's all for now. But I guess you want to check in with just employment and how we're doing there.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess on my end, I started working for Busy. I'm again after a year of not working. I wish I had a shot on me here, but I've got some
It's
somewhere.
official.
It's official. We launched on March 10th, and now we're 3 weeks in. So hitting stores, dropping off product, tracking velocities, making sure that all stores are happy with the product, making sure we're doing everything on our end to ensure that it's moving off shelf, and submitting promotions, submitting orders. It's really hand-to-hand combat,
What's the
and
product?
it's a 100 milligram 2 ounce shot. So it's just highly concentrated double espresso shot.
Nice.
It is, I will say, it is very comforting psychologically to have a job, knowing that I'm like doing stuff and making money doing it. So I can come home, I can work the whole morning. Dairy managers are in stores from like 5 a.m. to noon. So I hit stores during that time, put in my day's work, and then I can run and create content in the afternoon. And it's a good, healthy balance. And then I'll be starting up. Funny enough, I got some event teardown and setup coming up with Yoakum's uncle. So that's been nice. Those will start kicking back up. And then I was on a Zoom call the other day for the first meeting of being an umpire for 9 to 14-year-olds. And
it's gonna get rowdy with those parents.
Yeah, dude. I was on this call, and it was like 20 people, and it was like the two owners who graduated St. Thomas in 2015. One of them is a former track athlete, so
nice.
Within the realm. And then it was me and like 19 other 17-year-olds. So it was funny listening to the questions come in of like, what if we don't have a bank account? How do we get like just wild stuff? And I'm like in the back of my mind listening, like, should I be here right now? Like, what am I? I'm about to get married. I'm thinking about trying to like get a house and get health insurance for my fiance. It's just, but it's like you make 50 to 75 bucks a game out there for an hour and a half. It's solid. I can do it.
It's actually really good.
Yeah, if I do 5 games a week for a month, it's $1,000 a month. So I need work like that right now, where it's like the event setup or takedown, or even the stuff I'm doing with Busy that takes a lot less mental work. It just is exchanging time
too.
Yeah. So
nice.
So how about you? How's the running store going?
Running company. Yep. It's been great so far. I've loved it, man. I don't know if I'd necessarily quantify it as a dream job yet, but I think it's just one of those jobs where I'm just so comfortable being there and like interacting with the customers. And most of the customers are like walkers and people that don't run, so it's a different
Mm.
demographic that I'm like interacting with on a social basis. So it's cool to be able to like introduce people to, better shoes for them and different gear. And I just think it's cool that, they take me as like an expert, and I am able to like use my knowledge that I've built up over all these years. And it's not like just going to me. I'm able to like shine some light on some other people too. Working there right now still, and just keeping my I guess eyes open for any other opportunities as well. Just kind of putting shots out there, putting different shots up at different places, and just seeing if they land. I ended up not getting an interview with Ultra Sign Up, which is unfortunate, but I
Mm.
think no matter what, like it's God's plan. So I know that
Yeah.
that might have been not the best opportunity for me, and might not have been the right timing for me. I think right now there might be some other opportunities on the horizon with Salt Lake Running Company down the line. I think they're seeing some good things in me and seeing that I could be um, a candidate for developing into a role that might be managerial. So it's been good so far. Really love working with the people I do on a daily basis. And right now, in most cases, I'm working the evening shifts, which is pretty nice. I get to do my run in the morning and do everything else I need to do, like content and stuff. And then I just work in the evening. It's a little unfortunate that's flip flopped kind of with Natalie's schedule, but while I'm here during the day, I'm able to like make Natalie food and like do things around the house, which is nice. Spend time with her and then go to work, and um, that's usually when it's a little bit busier too in the evenings when other people are off of work. Um, so been enjoying it. It's been a lot of fun, but just keeping my eyes open for any other opportunities as well. Don't want to totally tunnel vision right now. I think it's prime time to you know some opportunities are out there ripe for the taking. So just making sure that I'm ready for those. Um, I guess with that, one on the calendar in a few days is the Buffalo Run 50 miler that I'm running. Um, that's a big one for me because I felt like I didn't necessarily get as much out of myself as I wanted to for Black Canyon 100K. So I'm kind of doubling back here and using this as a race to just test my limits, like I mentioned in the last episode. So I'm gonna go out for the win, and then if it's in the cards that day, I'm gonna go for the course record, which was set back in 2011 or 2012 by Dylan Bowman. So it's been long standing. Many different talented athletes have taken it on and been unsuccessful. I know the course has changed in the past 2 years in terms of the order you run it. So I'm not sure if it's harder or less hard. It's kind of up in the air with little, I guess, data to determine that based on the previous year's times on the newer course. But I'm gonna go for it. There's $200 for winning first in the male division, and then it's interesting in this race. There's 240 for the women's division for winning first. I think it's kind of interesting. I
There's
like it.
there's more.
Yeah, there's more for the women's. I think there's some races that have more for the men's, which is like traditionally like what it's been like. So I think it's cool that they're flipping it around. I'm not sure why it has to be uneven, but along with the win, if I were to get the win and I'd get the $200, if I were to set the course record, it would be another 600 on top of that.
Oh, nice.
500 from Pentalon, which is a construction company, and then $100 the race director would chip in some more. So it would be a pretty sizable payday if I were to, all the stars aligned. It's a pretty stacked field. I can name some of the names quickly here. My buddy Sam
Yeah.
Collins, he's a longtime listener of the podcast. He's super good, super good shape. He's got a lot of experience running ultras. He does a lot of high mileage. He's built for really any ultra race. He's fast. He's good at uphills, good at downhills. So he'll be a good competitor. I think he's going to go a little bit more conservative. He said in the phone, I'm not sure if he's just lowballing me or what he's doing, sandbagging. But he said he's going to go a little bit more conservative because this is his first race of the year. and I think I might have a little bit of advantage over him since it's my second race and I've kind of
Yeah.
dialed things in. Him, Mark Hammond, who's an older, I think he's getting close to the Masters age if he isn't yet. Um, he's in, yeah, 39, so he's getting close to the Masters like age division. But this dude has, I mean, in ultras, there's like the Masters are some of the best. So I'm not saying that's like I'm not saying that's a negative. I'm saying that he's got experience. He's gotten top 5 at Western States 3 times. So he's got top three, and I think 5th once, among other insane finishes. He's on Ultra Sign Up alone. He's got 84 results. So
Oh my gosh.
he's been doing this for quite some time. He's a pro for Ultra. Wink, wink. And let's see who else we've got here. John Fitzgerald. He's a coach for CTS under Jason Koop. Let's see. There's a few younger guys at the top of the Ultra Sign Up list that are like hot shots. I feel like they've had some early success in their ultra careers, young ultra careers, like 24 years old to 23 years old, and they've done well with like 50Ks, 50 milers. So it'll be interesting to see how they take it out. Finn Melanson's running it as a training race for
Let's go.
Coconona, but dude is in insane shape. He's been putting up some insane workouts, so I'm curious to see how he's gonna take this one out strategy wise, just because like, I know that he's targeting Coconona, so like this isn't his main priority, but he's also probably based on like the Strava.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask where are you seeing him put? Are they seeing them on his social media, or are you
Strava.
looking at Strava?
On Strava, I'm stalking all these people, and I think based on like his workouts, like on paper, he's probably in the best shape out of anyone in this field. And then last competitor that I'll list is Michael McKnight, who's also running Coconona, and he's running this as a training run, but he's also one that has experience. You know, he's got 57 races run on Ultra Sign Up, so he's not one to take lightly. And he's also running the Bear and the Bear 100 in Logan this September, which if you win this race along with the prize money, you do get an automatic entry, a Bear tag, which is basically like a golden ticket to the Bear 100 in September in Utah. So that's like the main thing I'm targeting over the money and over the course record. Like I want to get into the Bear 100 in September. So the winner would get that. And if they're already in, or if they just turn it down, it would roll down to second place. And if second place doesn't take it, then it goes away. So it's a pretty big race. I've been out on the course 8 different times now in the past like month and a half. So I'm familiar with, I've ran every single step of the course. I know where I can push. I know what efforts feel comfortable for me. And now it's kind of about making sure that my crew, who's going to be Natalie, my wife, and then my buddy Zach, also known as Trails with Zach on Instagram, making sure that they're prepared to crew and pace me and they know like all the things I need. And I'm expecting that these aid station stops will be the most efficient and fast moving that I've ever done before. It's mostly just gonna be bottle swaps. So I'm gonna be like chucking my bottles on the ground. Natalie's gonna be holding like the bottles like this. I'm just gonna come by, run by, grab them, and I'm gonna be out. Like I'm not gonna stop. Like I'm not gonna stop running the entire race, just because I know like that this course record is pretty stout, and I know that with the competition, I can't really leave anything on the table. I kind of have to just like take everything I can get and control what I can control. The course record is 6 hours and 15 minutes with some change for 50 miles, which ends up being 7:30 per mile for 50 miles, which is going to be a tall task, but I think that I'm fit enough and capable enough of doing it. On a training run not so long ago, I think like 3 weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, on the island, I did 36 miles at 7:10 pace. So I think I'm capable of pulling out like a 50 mile at 7:20, 7:25, and just seeing where that takes me. So first priority will be the win and having fun. That'll be the first priority, and getting that bear tag and getting the prize money for winning. And then the second priority will be if my legs are feeling good enough and I feel like I God has that day, that good of a day in store for me. I'm going to go for the course record and just see how that goes. I asked, the funny thing is, I emailed Dylan Bowman of the Free Trail podcast and just
Yeah.
a legendary runner. Like I emailed him and asked him if he had like splits for like certain miles, or like if he had like, yeah, what his splits were. And it's funny because back in 2011, 2012, whenever it was, he didn't have a GPS watch or Strava. So
Unreal.
he didn't even have anything to give me. He just said, "Good luck. I hope you go for it."
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
which is just funny. Like back then, like, so I'm definitely at more of an advantage than he was. Comparably, I have the GPS watch, super shoes, probably better fueling. I'm not sure how much. I mean, he was probably feeling well because he's that dial of an athlete, but I think I'll be able to fuel better, hydrate better, just based on like the new knowledge that we've gotten collectively as a community. Um, the weather seems like it's gonna be super good too, like 42 to 48 and cloudy. So like perfect weather to dial in a fast race. Conditions out in the island should be good as well. I don't think it's rained there in a bit, so it should be dry and hard packed. So all things considered, and all the variables seem to be pointing in the right direction. So really excited for what the day has in store, and I'm just gonna go for it and see what happens. If I blow up, I blow up, and I just at least I know where like my limit was on that day and what I had in the tank, and I can go home happy knowing I went for it, and I'm satisfied with that. But I'm
Yeah.
gonna fight like hell to stay in it, and um, I'm just gonna be curious to see what the other guys are gonna do and how they're gonna react to some of the things, some of the moves I make. So it'll be
I mean,
interesting. There's like 4 different races on the island at the same time, so it's gonna be a congestion fest out there. Like
chaos.
the
Yeah.
100 miler starts an hour before. At 6 a.m. We start at 7. The 50K starts at 8 a.m. and then the 25K starts at 9 a.m. I think all from the same spot. So like we'll be passing back and forth with a lot of different runners and crews. So I think it'll be nice to have other people on the island. I just hope that
Mm.
Natalie and Zach are able to get to all the crew spots efficiently enough where they're not stressing to get to me in time. But yeah.
Well,
should be-
and from this race until your next race, you have at least a full month
Yep.
to
Yes.
recover.
Yes, exactly.
So,
And that's another big thing. Like all of April after this race, will basically be me supporting Natalie in her efforts to run the Boston Marathon. And she's taking her 7th actuary exam in Boston the day after. So anything I can to support her in that, as well as get in our value out of our ski pass, because we haven't been able to do that with all this training, really. So I'm gonna try to ski more days at our ski resort Elta after this race, and yeah, she's also starting a new job in April as well. She got a new job offer from another company, so she's taken that, and she'll have some time to get dialed in for her race and her test, which is nice in between her jobs. So really happy for her, and she deserves every bit of success that's coming her way. She works so hard for it. So
shout out Natalie.
shout out to the GOAT, dude.
Also,
awesome.
shout out to Trails with Zach for
Yes.
anybody in the Utah area that's looking for a all gender inclusive group run. Zach has made it clear online that he's open to everyone, all levels, all genders. So if you're in the Utah area, make sure you show up for his trail run.
I mean, you say that now, but I think everyone in the Utah area knows Zach. Every time I go for a run with him, without fail, they're like, "Oh, you're that Trails with Zach guy." And then I like, there's people that didn't even say anything on the runs, but I look at like Strava flybys on runs. And this one we went out on Antelope Island and ran
Yeah.
a few weeks ago. I look on like the Strava post, and he's like, "Oh, I saw Trails with Zach out on the trails." But they didn't like even say hi. Like it was just like people just know him as the guy. So he's a sweet dude. I just saw that he went to like Moab to climb this huge rock spire, which is pretty interesting. I hope he's tapering for this pace job. Otherwise, I'll be dropping him. He's running 22 miles with me in the harder 22 miles of the course. The back half is harder, so I hope he's ready to get tossed in the washing machine because
Yeah, he's got to be ready to go.
Yeah, he better be ready to go. But I know he will be. He's gonna be staying over here the night before the race, and then we're gonna able to sleep in our. I'll be able to sleep in my own bed, which is nice. Which is not something I have done really at all for many of my races. I think the only one I did it for was my first marathon, the Twin Cities Marathon. So since then, we've developed quite a bit in our strategy. So hopefully, it won't have the same result as that one. But yeah, excited about that. Along with that, I know that you've got a race on your schedule coming up that we've talked about a little bit. We've talked about Wausau and how you're training for that.
Yep.
Any new developments or anything that you're doing now that you think would be nice for the listeners to hear, so that they could take away from it?
Well, just from our conversation on the last pod of looking at
Qualifiers.
So the Ode de Laz is a race just north of Detroit, and that's a 2026 qualifier, and it's in July.
And that's for like the world. And to clarify, that's for the Backyard Ultra World Championships as like a team, right?
Yeah,
that's
for Team
like
USA.
Team USA. Yeah.
So that would be, we're essentially the best of the best in Backyard Ultra from the United States will go to meet at one location, and then they will compete against all the other best of the best in the world. And it's just like a live streamed event where it's a last person standing. Am I correct in that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And Ode de Laz is a 2026 qualifier. So I'm looking at it this year. I have it on my calendar. It's Saturday, July 19th. And next year would be the qualifier. But I'm thinking about going this year just to get a understanding of the course and know what it's like, get extra reps in at the last person standing race. And the only thing is I wouldn't have a crew for that one. It would be me solo, but I still think there's a lot of value in me being there and doing that. So I'm looking at that for July 19th in preparation of building like a groundwork foundation for a 2026 qualifying race. So those are the only developments in like the race coming up. Wausau, there's not a ton of new information. I'm just going to go out there and essentially try and replicate what I did last year. Things I'm working on now, though, is like building out a project for a Beat My Beer Mile series coming in June. And what Beat My Beer Mile is, for the listeners, it's a race series I started last year where I'd race college athletes to see if they could run a faster mile than my beer mile. And I did 2 separate runs. One was a 475-mile run from St. Paul to Chicago. I raced 4 college athletes along the way. This year, I am, based on the feedback I got from the people that follow me, they would rather see more races and me drive to the locations than less races and me run to locations. So I took that feedback. I'm lining up 18 races in June against the MIAC and WIAC football teams. So it's going to be a knockout style beer mile. The goal is to bring on a sponsor, which I am sending out a deck to them today. And the goal would be to have $1,000 prize for the team that collects the most points and some free beer to go along with that. And a very simple way to earn points is the amount of laps you complete. So I've done a beer mile knockout against the St. Thomas lacrosse team. If I pass them at any point, that player is out. So you would earn points by the amount of laps you complete. And then if you had any players on your team beat me, that would be 8 total points. Team with the most points, at the end of the series gets $1,000 and some free beer. So that's my strategy for Beer Mile. There's a few reasons why I'm doing it. One is because I love the one thing that I'm not getting in ultra running, at least right now in the races that I'm doing, is that quick fix dopamine hit of like a competitive foot race. I got that at the end of 150K, which is so funny because it was for 7th place. It wasn't even for first place. But essentially tracked the guy down a mile from the finish line and like passed him within 10 yards of the finish line. And that feeling of hunting someone down, being able to see him that whole mile, track him down and pass him and like go to a place that I hadn't gone to, felt like the most insane dopamine hit of all time. It was awesome. It was a rush. It unleashed something. It unleashed the dog mentality. And I found that in Beer Mile. And a lot of these college athletes, at least for football players, they're probably only running like a 6-minute mile at best because of the training that they're doing. And my Beer Mile time just so happens to fall around a 6-minute beer mile. And so having that structure set up where like I know that no football player is going to be able to spend time getting their mile time down from like 6 minutes to 5:30. So it's like I kind of know what to expect if I target a specific athlete. So I get that like really quick competitive race on. And then secondarily, I see it as an opportunity to grow my socials and grow opportunities. Like some of my Beer Mile videos are the only videos that I've really made substantial money on YouTube from. And if I can grow that out, then I can build in other opportunities of making money, bring in new audiences, and then hopefully use those audiences to then build in other projects like going to Cocodona 250 next year. Like doing a bigger challenge that's much more physically, mentally demanding than these kind of like fun, creative challenges. So there's two strategies there, and at the same time, it's still like it still fits me. Like I feel very much myself doing it, and so that's kind of the structure and strategy I'm going in for that.
Awesome. I just had a question on a lot of comments I see on those videos are made about whether it's NA beer or just normal beer. Like,
Yeah,
what is your take on that? And like, yeah.
So I am sympathetic to the fact that if people see me using NA beer, they think the whole point is defeated. I did think that the first Beer Mile that I did was back in like 2020, 2021. My Beer Mile time was 13, 14 minutes. And by that fourth lap, the alcohol was hitting. I was getting drunk. But then when you get your Beer Mile time to like sub 7, the alcohol doesn't hit you until 5 minutes after the race is over. And so the alcohol wasn't playing a role in the race itself. It was just making me drunk multiple times a week. During the weekday, when I still had other training, I would have to go home and edit the video that took me like 2 hours to do while drunk. And so I switched over to NA. It has no effect on the actual race because it's just about consuming a carbonated liquid and then being able to keep sprinting after that. So
I mean,
to address
water would be like for any listener, I haven't done a beer mile before, let alone a mile. I do something every lap, but I couldn't even imagine running that fast with water. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like drinking that much fluid in general or doing anything for that much time, like to still run that fast of a time, I think is impressive nonetheless. And I think that it doesn't matter if it's NA beer or not. It's just like a beer mile is a thing that's like it's a bigger event, and it's something that's, there's competitions for it. So I know that that's like the thing to do.
Well, and this is a good opportunity to recognize that no matter what you do, people are always going to say something about it. And I just don't care if people call me soft or saying it's pointless because I use NA beer. People like, you might as well use soda. In fact, if I were to do Coke or Sprite, that would be significantly harder than doing like the heaviest IPA that has the most alcohol content. Like significantly harder because the carbonation and fizz and sugar is just like so much more dense than a beer. So just, for the listeners, do what you want as long as it fits with how you live your life. And I'm not out here trying to promote binge drinking. Like that's not my point of doing this. Like part of my point is to get in front of college athletes that are in a situation where I once was. And I think if I can impress any message onto them in just a moment of time that is positive, that is building character in some way, that's what's important to me, not like drinking 4 beers and getting drunk and like, that's just not important to me at all.
Yeah,
So
and it's a fun event that you can get them involved. That doesn't take much commitment. It just takes 6-7 minutes of their effort, you know. So I think it's a quick, fun. It's not something that they would risk like an injury for, you know.
No.
It's like just something just quick and easy where they should
just
be able
fun to do.
They should be able to do it. Like
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I guess with all these beer miles, do you have like a vehicle then? If you're not running, are you gonna be biking? Do you get the busy van back?
That is I'm laying the groundwork for that. If not, I have a vehicle myself. But I think for a marketing opportunity, I think Busy to lend me the van for a month while I'm like, it's sitting outside my house right now. I use it every day when I go to stores. It would be beneficial for them to allow me to use it and add it to my content strategy than it just sit in their parking lot. That's the pitch I'm going to send to Alex, but we'll see if it gets there.
Sweet. Awesome.
So
we got like three more things we should talk about. One being Barkley, two being the Moab 240 documentary, and then like three, I think one of the biggest ones is Chianti. Start with Barkley. That one just took place, I believe, last week, and there was no finishers last year in comparison to the 5 the year prior from multiple reports, and I think it was just unanimously, I can't say the word.
Unanimously.
Oh, nice pronunciation. Yeah, it was decided that, or it was recognized that the course was much harder than last year. I think that Laz and the new race director, they show a vengeance and like they want to make it harder and almost put it on the brink of being possible. So I
don't mean to cut you off, but can you lay, because even I struggle to articulate it.
Mm-hmm.
What is Barkley? How does it work? And like, how do you get into it too?
Yeah. So it's, I think outright it's just a sadistic event where the race director and Laz want to see you suffer.
And again, Laz is the guy who started Backyard Ultra as well.
Yep, he started Backyard Ultras. He started this event. I think he's phasing out of it more so now as a race director, just because it's a lot more responsibility I think he wants to undertake. But he's still there, and he's still a major part of it. So it takes place in Frozen Head State Park on the East Coast. I think it's in West Virginia, I believe. I could be wrong about that, but one of those states in the East Coast. And allegedly, it's 20 miles per loop for 5 loops. People say it's more than that. And each loop has, at least 10 to 15,000 feet of vertical gain up and down in these gullies and mountains there. So it originated when Laz saw that the killer of, I think it was Martin Luther King. I'm pretty sure he was in a prison in the same area as Frozen Head State Park, and he escaped from that prison. And within 60 or so hours, he had only made it like 8 miles in that terrain, just because of how hard it is to move in. And Laz thought, I could run 100 miles in that terrain in 60 hours. So he came up with this event that's about 100 miles with a 60-hour cutoff, and each lap has a cutoff time that you have to be back by. So to get into this race, it's a who you know, and it's basically like, I think I heard someone on the podcast say it's like almost like a black belt where only black belts can give a black belt to someone else. Like
Mm.
you can't get a black belt from a random person or like a teacher. Like they have to be a black belt themselves. So to get in, you have to know someone that has participated in Barkley before, and they let you know how to the email or the process, and then you send a letter into LAS. And I think thousands of people apply each year, and only I think 40 or so are allowed for this permit on the state park, just because the area where you start the race and where your crew isn't that big of a, I don't know, it's not that big of an area or surface. So not many people can run it. Like 40 people can run it. It's like 100 miles with like 60,000 feet of vertical gain. So each year it's rare that people do finish it. I think all time since it's been running for the past like 45, 50 years, only 20 to 25 people have finished the race. So it puts you at the brink of what's possible for humans. And that's kind of like what the goal of it is, to see how far you can go. You reach your limit and then pushing even past that limit. And it's really wacky. Like the entrance fee is like $1, and like he asks for certain things each year, like a pair of socks or like a flannel, and you just like bring that and like your license plate from your state so you can hang them up. And then there's like a 12-hour window or like a 24-hour window, something like that. The facts here are tough to get all right at once just because there's so many different variables, but between that 12 to 24-hour window, whatever it is, at any time when you hear a conch blown by the race director, the race will start within an hour and you have to just be ready to go. So this year it was actually ultra hard because they basically made them stay up through the night, and then they started it early in the morning, or like mid-morning, so that you were almost always on edge and you didn't get good enough sleep. And then the course was, John Kelly, who's completed it 3 times before, said it was 10% harder than any other time he'd run it.
Because of that night before staying up.
Not just because that, but because they added more vertical gain to the course and made it harder because 5 people had finished the year before. So they're like, oh, if 5 people are finishing it this year, like we need to make this thing harder even. They added more books that you had to get as well. So I think you had to get 16 books rather than like the normal like 12 to 14. And that's another factor of it. It's not like you're just out on this land running 20-mile loops. You're off trail basically the entire time with like bouldered size rocks, leaves covering the rocks with mud, and you have to find these books in the day, in the middle of the night, when it's raining, and tear out a page that corresponds with your bib number for each lap. So say my bib for lap 1 was 14, I would have to navigate with a map and compass because you don't have a GPS watch either. That's another factor. You just have like a Timex watch they give you. You can't have any technology on you, no phone, nothing. So you're out there in survival mode, and you're navigating yourself. You have to be familiar with the compass, how to use it, how to use a map, where to go, and you are tracking these books down. And I mean, the weather out here gets so gnarly that it almost feels like you can't see like 10 feet in front of you at times, just because of how foggy and like heinous they can get. I couldn't even imagine trying to find these books in the middle of the night, like in these like plastic bags, and like ripping out the page and trying to stuff it. And say you come back with 15 of the 16 book pages because one fell out of your pack, you are done. You can't continue on. So it's a super hard race that's super exclusive, and one that the extremists in the ultra running community do. It's a niche of a niche sport, but it's one that garners like some of the most media attention outside of like Western states, because it is so insane and something that an everyday person, let alone the most grizzled veteran ultra runner, could even fathom completing. Last year,
they made a documentary about it that you watched.
Yep, and there's a documentary that Single Track made alongside Drew Darby that was on Jasmine Paris's finish in 2020 for last year. She was the first woman ever to complete the race, so it was a pretty monumental monumental achievement. And in the documentary, they interview a lot of the former participants and people that have completed the race and people that haven't. People like Courtney Dauwalter, Gary Robbins. Yeah. So it's a pretty insane documentary. I would highly recommend that anyone that's interested in ultra running at all, or running in general, or just seeing someone do something epic, watch it. It's interesting because you can't have like any crew out on the course. It's like just at one spot, and only cameras can go in two different spots on the course. So you're basically out there alone, if not with a few others, just to help like support you that are also running the race. But pretty epic documentary.
Just to close that, like,
yeah,
you give him his flowers all the time. I do want to too. Finn and single track, like what they're doing for the sport is monumental. Like right now it's sitting at 325,000 views in 5 days, which is
holy cow.
So sick. It's just so sick. And like our sport is very much, it's not in the entertainment factor in the way that maybe you see on social media, where it is much more entertaining, short form, a lot of clips. And it's never going to be, well, I shouldn't say never, but it's not going to be like your NFL Sunday where you can just sit on a couch and watch 15 different games and it's just like this dopamine. It really is about the story that you can tell through the sport. And it's so cool that they have been able to do that and do that on this type of scale, because it just brings more people into the sport. And I've always tried to connect with people. Like personally, I hate running. Like I hate talking about running. I hate talking about shoes. I hate talking about gels. I don't like talking about marathons or training. I like talking about the way in which you can overcome a challenge, and that can be broadcasted on so many different aspects of an individual's lives. And the fact that they're telling this story in the way that it is can just bring so many new people and attention to the sport, that people can get really invested in people's stories that will bring them to the sport, that will get them running. And I just think it's a really effective and transformative way to grow the sport.
Definitely. I mean, documentaries like that one are the ones that got me into the sport even before I really had run before, like gone for it. So it's something that could impact someone's life and change it, the direction of it forever.
Do you feel like we've had less, because, and maybe there's just a resurgence now of some, but I feel like when we were first getting in, there were a bunch of documentaries, and then there haven't been, and now there feels like there are more coming out. Is that just my every time I go to YouTube and ultra running doc, it's the same ones.
The social media takeover of like everyone focused on putting out like montages and clips, and now it's like everyone's sick of that and burnt out on it, and everyone wants to go back to documentaries and slowing down a little bit and getting a story rather than just quick hits. So another documentary that I'd watched recently that just came out was the Moab 240 documentary from Max Jolliffe.
King of Moab.
He had just won Moab last year, and it documents like his journey to it and then the race itself. It was pretty crazy to watch him bounce back from some of the things he did in a 200-mile race that are inevitable. It just seemed like he was bound to DNF, and somehow he pulled out with the win. So very good storytelling out of them, and really cool documentary that I'd also suggest watching. The Jasmine Paris documentary that we had just mentioned on the Barkley Marathons is called The Finisher, and it's on the Single Track channel. And this one is the one by on Max's channel, Max Jolliffe, his channel. I think it's just King of Moab or Moab 240 documentary.
Yeah, it's King of Moab on Max's channel.
Yep. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up that happened this weekend was the Chianti Ultra Race in the wine country of Italy. Shout out to our boy Henry, who's
Yeah.
out in Italy.
Enrico.
Oh man, I miss that dude. I hope to see him at some point this summer. I hope that like we can somehow make it work and link up because I should be at a certain point running through Courmayeur in Italy, and I think it's like a 4.5 hour drive.
Oh,
So
he's got to make
if
that drive.
if I see him during the race or something, man, like that would, man, I'm winning. I'm winning.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. No, but this is the guy that he's Italian, and he interned with our strength coach and friend Austin Yoakum for a summer. Came here on basically a whim, like he just was shooting his shot, and man, this he's unreal. He's a great guy, freak athlete, and it's just cool to see that he went across the world to try to like make his dreams come true, and he's doing it. So I think he's coming back again this summer for an internship. He said he'll be here like in August and in Minnesota.
Oh, really?
Again. In Minnesota again in August. So hoping he said see you on game day. So
Let's go.
yeah. So he's doing that again. But back to the Chianti race. It was in the big race, in the one that was the longest distance. It was 75 miles. It was a match between Jim Walmsley, Kilian Jornet, and Vincent Bouillard, and they're the past 3 winners of UTMB. So I mean, Jim Walmsley and Kilian are 2 of, if not the 2 best ultra runners of all time, males, I should say, but if not everybody. And they were there. I mean, Jim was there to be competitive. Kilian and Vincent were there to win golden tickets, since this was a golden ticket race for Western States, which means that there was 2 for the top 2 to automatically get into Western States. And since Jim already had a ticket, if he would have placed in the top 3, it would have rolled down to the next person. I ended up staying up late to like 3 a.m. and watching most of the race. And I think before the 30-mile mark of the 75 miles, Jim just pulled away, and it was just like Vincent and Kilian couldn't match, or they didn't want to expend all that energy and, blow that for, an inevitable Western States run later in the summer. So Kilian ended up finishing second, Vincent in third. Super impressive from all of them, just to watch them all run together at once, like just seeing like 3 quote unquote goats. I think Vincent's more of an upcomer, but he's proven that he can hang with the best of them. He won Western States in like a top 3 all-time time, and he also just got signed by Hoka. He's still working for Hoka. It's funny. It was a story of last year. He was an employee, and he still is, on their like engineering team, designing the shoes, the trail shoes that Jim Walmsley and the Hoka athletes wear. And then he ended up winning. Basically, he won UTMB in the shoes that he's designing and creating.
That's awesome.
So now he's on like a split, I think, contract or some type of deal where he's able to be an athlete along with doing his job. So he's got a lot on his plate, but it's cool to see that he's balancing both, and it's something that I kind of look up to and am motivated by, that someone's able to do both, because I could see myself in the future doing something like that. So that just adds to the already stacked Western States field. It's going to be absolutely absurd. Jim Walmsley, he's won it like 3 to 4 times. Rod Farvard, he got second last year. Hayden Hawks has been top 3. My coach, shout out the GOAT. Adam Peterman, he's won. Caleb Olson got 5th last year in the fastest debut ever, 14 hours 40 minutes. Who else? Kilian, Vincent, David Roach, Jeff Magavero, and then there's still another golden ticket race. Oh, Seth Ruling, I should say, from the Boulder Boys podcast. He just won at Black Canyon. Will Murray, like, dude, this race is going to be like the most insane watch ever. And we haven't even had the Canyons 100K yet. That's happening in April, where there's going to be 3 more golden tickets on both sides. So, women's race is also going to be stacked. It's not going to be as stacked as the men's side. I think UTMB for the women's side will be a bit more stacked than the men's side this year. It seems like they've been flip flopping lately, where it's both aren't usually stacked. But curious to see how things pan out. And man, it's gonna be tough to beat Jim, seeing the performance that he put up at Chianti. And he's the one to beat at Western States. He hasn't really been beat. The only one time he had lost in that course was when he beat himself by making a wrong turn. So that'll be interesting. But I know there's a lot of guys gunning for that win there. Killian's making a trip to the U.S. for the first time in like 10 years just to run this race again. And he got second at Chianti basically with an injured hip and pushing through just so he could get there. So I think that'll be insane to watch and one to look out for at the end of June.
End of June, yeah.
Yep.
We'll keep an eye on it.
One day I'll be there. We'll see though. It's just getting more and more competitive and hard to get in, but that brings everyone up to a higher level. So I think it's pretty cool that everyone's kind of getting on the same page in terms of like their tactics and fueling, and then it's just a matter of like who can execute best on that day. So anything else on your end that you wanted to add or say?
No, I think the only thing I'd add to that is the excitement around like these guys are at the top of their game and they're a decade older than us.
Yeah. It's cool to know in this sport that you don't peak at like your mid-20s.
Right.
These guys are peaking in their mid-30s.
We're very hungry individuals, and it feels good to know that we can tame some of that hunger with patience and know that in due time, if we just continue to put the work in, which is super cool.
Yep. Long road ahead. Just got to be patient.
Yes, sir.
Alrighty. Episode 14 of the Ultra Ascent podcast with your hosts, Mark Dowdle and myself, Alex Proctor.